It is a perfect day here in Florida. It's absolutely gorgeous. I know different parts of the country have got different things going on, but what a beautiful day. I say that kind of to distract you a little bit because of what's been going on. Now, yesterday, we had a very much of a focus right back on Ukraine, right? Markets were getting sold off pretty extensively to the downside, but in the final couple hours, we really started to turn and burn. As a matter of fact, the Dow Jones actually got up and over that 35,000 level once again, only to give a little bit of that back. Actually finished down about 54 points on the day, underneath 35,000, but a nice wicked run towards those final 2 hours of the day. Same thing was true for the Nasdaq. The Nasdaq was getting hit pretty hard as well, not a little bit different than the Dow. This time, however, we did see in the final 2 hours a really nice rally, about 150 points. Still closed in negative territory as well, down about 15 points, but gives you a little bit of idea of how much movement we are getting intraday each and every day. And that's really a big part of what we're talking about, especially when I talk about volatility index, implied volatilities of different options out there of different categories, whether it's semiconductors or individual names as well. So yesterday had a big range. Range was about the upper 23s all the way over 27. And then we actually settled back on the final part of the day after we'd seen a little bit of that rally that was pretty extensive. We finished right around that 24.30 mark. So still off about 5% on that volatility. So we gave back a little bit, a lot of comfort overall, but I still want to warn everybody. We all know how these news cycles go, particularly on the political side of things. And I don't know that you can always believe that everybody's backing off or this is going on or this is until we get absolute confirmation. And that's what we're seeing right now is not seeing confirmation, but just seeing a lot of volatility and a lot of discussion about what the Russians are doing with Ukraine. So I think that's going to persist for a little while longer. Now, we've heard multiple stories about this, and that kicks us right into energy because energy is a part of this whole thing. Actually finished up about 0.75% yesterday as well. Materials, industrials, they started to come back a little bit as well. So we started to see that along with technology, semiconductors, that in the final couple hours, as we started to see that rally, they really did erupt and move to the upside off of some of the lows for some of those various names. Now, some of the names that were moving yesterday. Well, Generac had a great day, started off great, finished the day great. We also saw a great day out of KHC, up about 5% throughout the day, held on to those gains throughout the day. Kraft Heinz. Beta Energy really was strong yesterday as well. I talk about energy all the time. We talked about it yesterday on the halftime report. A lot of people, suddenly you get to 93, we pull back a little bit and they fade away and they say, you know what, that was it. That was the run. I'm not so sure about that, especially based upon what we are seeing globally. On top of that, what we are seeing in the options markets themselves. Might even have one of these for an unusual coming up here as well. But Devon and Schlumberger and those kinds of names, if you heard me yesterday on the halftime report, one of the unusuals of the three that we had an opportunity to do this time was Devon Energy. It was some monstrous paper. They were rolling up 30,000 calls that they were selling on the lower strike of the 50s and going up to the 60s. They bought about 52,000 of those, probably more by the end of the day, but that was just that initial push. So that was something that really was telling, I think, once again, folks that have been right and want to stay in that trade. And we talk about that all the time. That's called rolling out and up. In this case, just up because they already had enough room to the outside in terms of away from where we are right now. Those were not short-term options. Boy, there was a lot of pressure on a lot of different areas. Viacom definitely, absolutely getting slammed yesterday. I heard a lot of people trying to defend it. Here's the biggest problem I have oftentimes with some of these names. Are you buying these for the yield? Because anytime that is one of your primary priorities, I think that's a huge mistake. Yield sounds great, but you've got to have the fundamental side. You've got to have great leadership. You've got to have all of that. And do you have growth? And if you don't have some of those elements, yield sounds great. I don't know that it necessarily is. You can create yield by selling options. That's something we talk about all the time. It's what I do against long positions consistently. Akamai is another one of those names getting hit yesterday. PayPal got a nice slap yesterday as well. Zoom, CrowdStrike, you get the idea. DocuSign, a lot of those types of names, and we talk about those as those high PE names or mega growth type names. Great names, but at times they certainly are under pressure, and we've seen that pressure, especially over the last month or two. Tesla, I always use that as that barometer. What a nice move yesterday off the lows from 900, got all the way up to 923. Apple from 170 got up to 172. Not a huge move out of Apple, but a nice move. And when you consider the mega market cap that you've got there, that is something that's pretty extraordinary. So as we jump into today, we've got the jobless claims much higher than expected. 248,000 looking for 218,000. That was interesting. Also an adjustment to December as well. So a lot going on there. That was maybe parts of it. I think the escalations, worries at least of Ukraine, certainly also a big part of the market today as well. We start off the market day down a little over 100 points on the Dow, nearly 100 points on the NASDAQ. We have only consistently been accelerating lower throughout the first hour of the day. That can change. We just looked at yesterday and how we had that big rip towards the very end. I'm not saying that they can't, but last I looked, we were down almost 500 points on the Dow. We were also pushing that 200, 225 points on the NASDAQ. These are major moves. That's the intraday movement that we are seeing. We might see some back and forth, or does this continue to the downside? We'll see over time. But take a look over the 10-year. Gave up that 2%, got a lot closer now to 1.9%. I look over at crude. It's been as high as 93, 92.5. 91.5. Last I looked, that's about where we were trading. 91.5 towards that 92 level. Could give up a little bit. Obviously, there's going to be pressures throughout the day. I look at the volatility index, 26 and 27. That's where we seem to be, holding 26. And as we get towards 27, that seems to be a little bit of a limit for now. We'll see. We'll see. We obviously were at 30 not too many days ago. So that's not that far away right now from where we are. So we'll continue to monitor that. So financials. Started off a little bit weaker, down about 1%, accelerated nearly 2% to the downside early on. Technology down about 1%, down 1.75% pretty rapidly. Some of these numbers obviously have already changed because we have absolutely been pushing a little bit faster right before I came on to the downside. Semiconductors are already off a couple of percent. They were off nearly 3% early on. Energy was the only sector green early on. That gave up as well. So that moved a little bit into the red, not materially, but it did. So we look across at all those things. Then you go back to earnings. We still are in earnings season. You look at Cisco, had great numbers. That was up about 3 to 5% early on. Walmart, also solid numbers, solid outlook. That stock was up pretty nice early on. NVIDIA, a solid report, but people really didn't like as much from the looks of things, some of the outlook maybe that NVIDIA had. So is that a reason to give it off a couple of percent? Maybe, but certainly an unbelievable company. And once again, their earnings were very, very powerful. DoorDash, on the other hand, had a couple areas that you might say, well, that kind of makes me scratch my head a little bit. And yet that stock up significantly higher, double digits to the upside today as well. A lot of growth there. Obviously, we've been talking about a lot of these growthy names over time. So Beta Energy, that was strong early on. You look at Devon. How about all that option activity yesterday, kind of feeding into that? And you've got Marathon as well. Albemarle is one of those names that's very weak today, down 12, 15%, getting hit pretty hard. NVIDIA, I already mentioned last I looked, down 7.5% today. Datadog, a couple of percent. Moderna, a couple of percent. You get the idea. Now, keep an eye on this. We don't talk about ETFs. I don't talk about volatility index as a trade very often, but I will point this out because we were seeing this very early on. The VXX short-term volatility index. Now, this one was trading a little over 21, and we had 8,800 of the February 25th expiring, the 23 calls. So you got a little bit of time going on in the future. They're buying nearly 9,000 of these calls, paying a little over $1. Call it $1.05 for these calls. That's interesting because last time we'd seen some of the option paper like that, we started to see that volatility index spike right through there almost immediately. Not saying that's going to happen again. Don't get me wrong. But seeing that type of option paper does start to trigger, hey, I'm going to keep an eye on this VXX and obviously the VIX and a lot of the other different instruments that are measuring volatility as well. So just want to point that out to you. PXD, I mentioned energy. Pioneer. It's another one of these big energy names, obviously within that XOP and the rest of what I like to refer to as those beta names. And PXD, certainly very strong, trading 222.70. We had a buyer of 4,000 of the January. Now that's unusual. They're going all the way out to January. We're in February of 2022. They're going to January for these calls. The Jan 240 calls paid $22. That's a lot of premium that they're paying for those. You're buying time is what you're doing there. That's what they are doing there. On top of that, that's being hedged off. They're buying the 240s, selling the 280s, putting on that spread, taking in some of that risk, of all that time and so forth by selling those 80s against those 40s, also capping a little bit of that upside. So very interesting trade to see that. As I say, 4,000 of those trading as well, going out nearly a year. Pretty interesting. Folks, have a great day of trading. It's going to be another wild ride. You already know that. When you're starting the day in the first hour and you're down as much as 500 points on the Dow and a couple hundred points on the NASDAQ, that is the start of the roller coaster ride. Let's be very, very disciplined and be smart throughout the day. Folks, have a great day of trading.